All right, we're going to get going with our fourth panel. So if everyone could please sit down. I'm just going to keep awkwardly talking until everyone is sitting down. All right, so our fourth panel, which is starting right now, right ahorita mismo, is titled FinTech, AI, Artificial Intelligence in Banking. I'm going to introduce our wonderful moderator, Tracey Lauriault, to come to the stage to kick things off. Tracey Lauriault is a critical data studies scholar who works on open data, big data, open smart cities, open government, data sovereignty, data preservation, and data governance. Her ongoing research includes disaggregated equity data, digital twins, intersectional approaches to data governance, data invisibilities, and the history of census. As a publicly engaged scholar, she mobilizes her research into data and technology policy in all sectors. As a data and technological citizen, she examines large and small complex systems with the hope of making them more just, inclusive, equitable, and environmentally sustainable. Tracey.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. How are you? 3 o'clock? Right? These people are making us work very hard. I can see you've had panels the whole time. I hope this one's very interesting. We have an illustrious panel here that's going to talk about FinTech, AI in banking, very important things that we all have to engage with in one way or another. We have Claudia del Pozo, who's the founder and director of the Eon Institute. Francisco Rivadeneyra, I should have checked on this beforehand on reading the name, so my bad, excuse me, who's the director for the CBDC and FinTech policy and research at the Bank of Canada. We have Robin Grosset from Mindbridge AI here based in Ottawa. And we have Fabiana Montoya, Director of FinTech Partnerships at Scotia Digital. So what we're going to do, if that's okay with you, is we're going to start off where they're going to introduce what they do specifically in terms of FinTech in their specific organizations. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we can do between Mexico and Canada in this space and identify some issues. Does that work with you? Yes, all right, let's go. How about we start off with you?
Sure.
Oh, you need a microphone. Here, you can have this one.
Thank you.
There you go.
Hi, everyone, again.
Perfect.
So you're probably wondering why I'm here. So part of my work also has to do with, the entire AI lifecycle, which starts at the point of data. And like we were talking earlier, it's important that data be able to reflect the context. So how can we create more Mexican data? So I was involved in creating a research paper on how open banking could positively impact Mexico and financial inclusion. Open banking being a standard that started in the UK around 2017, 2018 to promote the exchange of data between financial institutions and give consumers more control over their financial data. So I won't go into the specifics of that standard, but that is how I'm related to this panel somehow.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fabiana. I'm the Director of FinTech Partnerships and Innovation in Scotiabank. Part of the role that we play in FinTech is my team works with the different lines of business in Scotiabank, identifies opportunities and converts them into problem statements. Then we bring these problem statements into our vast ecosystem network, and we help them identify the right FinTechs to work with. So as we bring them in, also my team supports the experimentation and testing. So we will run a proof of concepts and pilots with the business. And hopefully we eventually help the organization move these FinTechs into productions. So that's part of the role that we play in Scotiabank. And I would say, personally, super excited about this particular point in time. My whole career has been working with business to help them adopt new technology and how they change and have to rearrange the way they work to bring new technology. And we're so excited to see the amount of opportunities that FinTech and AI are bringing to the table.
Hi, everyone. My name's Robin Grosset. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Mindbridge here in Ottawa. Thank you so much for inviting me to the panel. I feel very privileged to be here. And I'm not sure if when they invited me to the panel, if people realized that Mindbridge, we were a startup. I'm not sure we were called that anymore, but 8 years ago, we started in Invest Ottawa. So as you go out, the Mindbridge logo is on the door. We're one of the companies that it came out of the kind of Invest Ottawa. So a little bit about Mindbridge, what I do, and why I think it's exciting. So we essentially look at financial data using AI. We've been doing this for 8 years now, I think. And we look for patterns in data that are indicators of unusual activity. I see AI as it's a great enabler of people. We talk about human-centric AI a lot at Mindbridge, how we enable people to do a better job, be better by leveraging technology and particularly AI. We analyze financial data in order to help people understand what is going on to make better decisions. And this is used extensively by internal audit functions, compliance functions, and external audit functions. We're about 130 people. Most people are located in Ottawa, in Canada, but we have people around Canada, some people in the US, some people in the UK. And we're growing very rapidly. The Globe and Mail said that we're a company to watch this year. Last year it was Forbes and Gartner. So we're enjoying a lot of growth. The way I'm going to link this to FinTech and banking, obviously we analyze financial data, that's maybe a bit of a given. One of our major clients is KPMG Global. I can talk about that because they announced their partnership with us last year. And KPMG, in North America, they audit about 40% of the assets of banking, right? So Mindbridge is an assistive technology for people to figure out what's going on in financial data. I think also the reason I'm in the kind of AI world, the reason I get excited about AI is I think the sea of information that's been out there for years, particularly in finance and banking, there's no lack of data. I know there was last panel, data challenges, we don't have enough data. We have enough financial data in the world, right? We have more than enough, but we're not leveraging it. We're not able to find the patterns in it. We're not able to understand what something would indicate. We don't have early warning mechanisms for errors that are occurring where we can intercede early and do something. So really that's why Mindbridge exists. We're helping audit professionals and financial professionals have a superpower, which is they point Mindbridge at the data and it will explain what's happening. So that's what I care about. I also care about governance a lot. The last panel was something where one of those panel members, we spent a lot of time talking, he's over there. Governance is something that's super important to me because we serve a lot of audit professionals as an example. And audit professionals, they go to school and they learn to be skeptical. They actually are expected to exhibit professional skepticism. So the idea that you could make someone like that trust a black box, you could never do it, right? Transparency, super important. Being able to explain your outcomes, being able to show you're working, helping people make decisions where it's not the AI saying, I've detected this, so you should just believe me. You have to show the information, you have to help them understand. So we spend a lot of time thinking about how we can be transparent, how we can explain, how we can validate that our AI is actually working. Someone said 1/3 of answers are wrong from certain companies' AIs. That's, we have an external party that comes in and validates our technology every year. They go through all of our algorithms and they check them. So we, and we publish that and we make it available to people because we want people to know that we care about accuracy. We care about people being able to believe in the insights that we produce. Sorry, I'm going on too much. I'm going to stop.
Yes, you are. But
Sorry.
it's really interesting. So we let them, right? It's okay when it's interesting, but if you were bored, it wouldn't continue.
You would interrupt me. I know you
That's
would.
right. Shall we pass it on to Francisco?
Yes.
Please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Francisco Rivadeneyra. I'm Director of CBDC and FinTech Policy at the Bank of Canada. So I'm legally obligated to say that what I'm going to say, my views are not the ones of the central bank. This is always protecting the difference between the academic environment that we have within the Bank of Canada and official policy. So what's my role and the role of my team within the Bank of Canada? Our job is to anticipate how developments like Gen I or past, when all these things were called machine learning, could change the makeup of the financial system. Does that change in any way or shape or form the role that the central bank plays in monetary policy or financial stability? So we basically are kind of the early warning system of the bank, but also we provide advice in terms of how to respond to those changes. And one of those big areas of advice is central bank digital currency. So we've been investigating central bank digital currency as a potential response to Bitcoin, since we thought that lots of folks thought that Bitcoin was going to revolutionize banking and central banking. Well, that hasn't passed. But at the same time, we need to be ready to issue a central bank digital currency if Canadians want that and if elected politicians choose to instruct the bank to issue one. At the same time, I'm an active researcher looking at, for example, the use of quantum computing for improving the efficiency of payment systems, as well as machine learning, like reinforcement learning models, to automate the liquidity management of big banks.
So quantum computing, big banks, the future, and control, VCs in the world, and digital from Scotia. A company that is doing FinTech and working with lots of data, and a wonderful women-led organization that is thinking about governance and open banking. In each of your really interesting contexts in this wild world of FinTech, and 4 different people, 4 very different organizations with 4 very different levels of responsibilities. Here we are at a panel talking about Canada and Mexico collaboration. So what do you see would be the things to support that in the world of FinTech? And what might be some of the challenges or the struggles that you might see in that space? Do you want to start off?
Sure.
All right, let's go.
Okay. So, so the reason, one of the reasons I got into this open banking space was to explore how we could promote more financial inclusion in Mexico. So this is really interesting. One of the main differences that you pointed out, so all credits to her, is people's approach, the difference of people's approach between Mexico and Canada. From Canada, there is a trust approach, especially towards government, in my understanding. In Mexico, there's a distrust approach to big institutions. So what was interesting with open banking is that, to give you, I'm going to try not to get into details, but basically what open banking suggests is that large banks, eventually it became, depending on the country, it could be just banks or other financial institutions, need to make their public data available through a standardized API. API, just imagine it's like a plug that I connect to Scotiabank. She accepts me because I fit the regulation requirements, and she gives me that public data instead of me having to go on her website and scrape the data, and it'd be not efficient at all. Something else that now banks would be obligated to share in countries where this would apply is also aggregate data. That means kind of overviews and tendencies. So I could use the data to see what main products are used by 30-year-olds, what women use, who is using credits most, and kind of understand the landscape better. And what's interesting there is that with that perspective, you can get a lot of innovation, be it from inside the same bank or from others, being FinTech companies that could detect a challenge that the bank hasn't been able to address for one reason or another. or isn't interested in addressing and address it themselves. And in Mexico, what we see is that fintechs are really interesting because as they appear, as they grow, kind of banks, I think, become kind of more like multimodal platforms to which fintech companies are connected. And these fintech companies can market themselves very specifically for different parts of the population. And it'll be easier to establish trust with someone as a fintech than with a big institution, which again, the approach is no trust. So that's why I've been involved in this fintech space, and I think this is a very exciting opportunity. Mexico has been a very interesting place in the fintech ecosystem, a lot of innovation going on, and Mexico is a country where a lot of fintechs are starting or coming. So I think it's a great place for Canadian fintechs to look into. Does your proposal fit the market? And as I said, there is huge opportunities in Mexico. But then the challenge, which you pointed to, what is the challenge? The challenge is this. How are you going to adjust your proposal to make sense in a context of zero trust? So I think I'll just leave you with that quick intervention so we can all participate as much as possible.
So a nice setup, Fabiana, for VCs. Very exciting times in Mexico, lots of interesting innovation, and this whole issue with trust and distrust, trust of small and not of big, is very, very fascinating. Over to you. What do you see?
So we for us at Scotiabank, Mexico is a key market for us. We've been operating in Mexico already for many years, and very important market for us. And we do see a lot of, for example, companies that are starting to come from the Mexico ecosystem. I think the opening of our partners to any. At the end, they invest where the ideas are growing and where the money is flowing, right? So we will look at some of the VCs some of the fintechs that are coming, and VCs actually are investing in funds that we have invested in are being invested into the Mexico ecosystem. So of course we're taking a very close look at those companies and the offerings they're bringing to the table. So we see a lot of great opportunities. And in terms of trust, it's interesting. We do see, of course, you have to trust your bank that it keeps your money safe. So I think that's a critical component of our business model, of course. And what we're seeing is, I would say, something that we see tons of opportunities with the open banking capabilities. Of course, we would love that Canada would move a little bit faster, but we understand that our government might be a little not as eager to move that way or at the speed we would like to. But we're monitoring because we see tons of opportunities of, for example, the bank understanding better what you want or need. People, everybody is sharing and agreeing to everything in the website just to get the next video. So we do see that there's tons of opportunity that you can share more data, and we can actually give you better services, or we can predict your needs. We know you might be needing something in the next couple of weeks, rather than you rushing at the end when you don't, I realize I'm running out of cash. We can actually tell you, you will be running out of cash in a couple of weeks. Do you want to start negotiating a loan? And we actually have the information for you. So you only have to submit these two specific data. It would be a lot more easy experience for us to build and always relying on asking you for information at the end, right? So I think that's something that we're really looking at. And again, for us, Mexico, we've used Mexican companies across our ecosystem. So in the whole Latin America, and we also have capabilities of Mexican companies where we're assessing for other businesses. So really excited with the partnerships.
Great, thank you.
This is an interesting question for me to answer. I'm a technologist and I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm not from around here. I'm a economic migrant from Scotland, in fact. So I came to Canada 16 years ago because a company I founded got acquired by a Canadian company, and I expected to be in Canada for 2 years, as an example. That was the deal, and I've never left, right? So I clearly something went well. I think I look at this very much from through an entrepreneur's lens, because that's where I live my life, and that's how I think about things. And I see events like this, like we're doing right now, is a huge part of raising awareness for the opportunities, for challengers to be able to kind of cross the divide and figure out what is the opportunity for Canadian organizations in Mexico and vice versa. I had a great opportunity, maybe I want to say 2019. I was strangely invited by a Canadian trade delegation to go back to the UK. This was at the start of open banking in the UK. This is the link to open banking. And what I witnessed, I went to pitch fests. I was listening to startups pitching ideas, and there was so much innovation around open banking. And what I found, and by the way, this wasn't happening in Canada. Sorry for Canadian development. This wasn't happening in Canada, and I found it amazing. There was a legislative change. We're talking about legislation. There was a mandate that you must provide these open banking interfaces, and the ecosystem that was built around them was astonishing, right? And the number of ideas, the number of opportunities for new value to be created. I mean, I think I heard 12 in one day, and I thought I'd invest in all of them, right? It was really a kind of an exciting opportunity at that time for those organizations. It wasn't for Mindbridge. That's not our game. But I found it really interesting how looking at what other development groups in other countries are doing can often be the seed which helps you see where you need to go, or an opportunity that is unspoken maybe, but which you can suddenly realize if you just make the right calls at the right time. So I see events like this as being a huge value creation for both sides. I look at it, and again, I look to it through an entrepreneur's lens, and it's this cross-pollination of ideas. The differences are often the most interesting part. You mentioned understanding how to adapt your product so that it makes sense in a zero trust environment. I love zero trust environments. I live in them, right? I think that it's things like that where you need to understand the differences as you're crossing between different kind of national norms. And I had to do this myself, moving from the UK to North America, to Canada, realizing that things are just a bit different. You might have to adapt. And I think it's organizations like Invest Ottawa as an example, where they can help small organizations figure out what they're missing, right? There's things I have never done. I'm an entrepreneur, and there are things I have no idea how to do and I have never done. But the support that you can get from organizations like this it's astounding. And the first startup, by the way, that I did was over in the UK, and there was no help. There was no help coming. And I was, when Mindbridge started, I was again astonished again at the level of assistance that we received, and just the help in understanding how to transit from one country to the next. What's there for you? How does it help you? So it's these types of events are what makes the difference. I think it's I would say, what's the starting point? It's this what we're doing. And as I said, it's the entrepreneur's lens is like, what are those opportunities that we can sink our teeth into and make happen?
So you want to go check out the scene in Mexico to see what's going on?
Yes, please.
And this is a stepping stone to get you there. Is that what you're saying?
Someone said earlier, why aren't we doing this in Mexico? And I'm like,
Why not? Why wouldn't you do it in Mexico, right? Why not? Exciting. Thank you.
Well, I'm another economic migrant, this one from Mexico. So also same tenure here in Canada. My perspective is different. You have the entrepreneur lens, we have the regulator or the public policy lens. So our job at the Bank of Canada is slightly different, is actually to separate hype from substance. And we do that by taking a tempered view about the potential that all these technologies might have at remaking the makeup of the financial system, or potentially change business models, create new ones. And I think generative AI, and the new phase of artificial intelligence is basically another phase of what we saw probably 10 years ago. Back in 2017, we put out a report called FinTech, Is This Time Different? Basically trying to take a joke on how sometimes innovation gets overhyped. It's going to be totally transformational. And you might recall back then in 2015, 17, they were heralding the end of banks, like the unbundling of banks. You know, you're going to have credit provision on this side, checking accounts on that side, insurance on that one, investments separate from each other. And back then, we took that calm tempered view to the economics of why banks exist the way they do. And we had two predictions. We had, the first prediction is banks will become, or will try to become like fintechs by acqui-hiring, getting the technology. That is, to the extent that these technologies are not proprietary, they can be acquired. And fintechs are going to try to become banks. And that's largely what happened. So you know about Coho trying to get a banking charter, Questrade as well. Wealthsimple getting very close to almost a quasi-bank, right? So this is bringing kind of the two sides closer and closer to each other. And I guess the question right now in this moment is Gen AI any different from all those? So I would apply the same framework that we applied back in 2017. And I think we're going to see those pressures on banks to catch up, adapt those technologies, and also fintechs to try to get those customer relationships that banks are very good at, right? So I think it's beneficial that we have that competitive environment, but it also allows us to ask questions of why open banking hasn't been that revolutionary in the UK, right? Is that the right policy? Or do we need just fast payment systems? Or do we need a central bank digital currency, right? And that's the space where our deliberations, our work lies mostly in. So what's the connection to Mexico? Well, all central banks cooperate in information sharing, in studies. So the international setting bodies like the Financial Stability Board will be looking this year at the potential implications of AI for banking regulation, and financial stability. So you might be looking at a report on that particular topic towards the end of the year.
Exciting. So we're going to be a little unconventional here because we've warmed up to these wonderful people. I'm coming to you for questions. What do you think? Don't make me sad by not putting your hand up because there we go. Yes. Can you tell us who you are?
Yes, I'm from Mexico.
Yes.
I was involved also in a fintech, in another one.
Fantastic.
I was partnering with Santander to build an ecosystem of fintechs around the bank.
Okay.
We have closed that deal because they didn't move at the speed we need to move with the startups. But we have a lot of learns about that. Is you need the ecosystem of trust that a bank gives you, but they need to think about fintechs out of the box investment, out of the financial statement. They need to think in fintechs as a VC. You have risk, and you need to take the best of them. So bet on 10, and probably you will have only one. And
where is your wonderful question for these wonderful people?
And the question will be
Perfect.
especially for the people involved here in
Yes.
Scotiabank and also the regulators.
Thank you.
How are you trying to develop ecosystems of fintechs that gives trust to the customers, especially in Mexico, because we have had a lot of investment in this type of business, non-regulated, with a lot of frauds. And how can you speed that?
Fabiana?
So,
Sorry, I went to the audience for a really difficult question, but wonderful question. Thank you.
so we work with one of our big strategies around how do we develop the ecosystems is we really work with specific venture capitals, right? So our venture capitals expand our network and allow us to identify who are the companies who are starting to get more traction and are making a better match for us in terms of the types of solutions, like the problems we're having and how we can solve them, right? So we trust a lot that I would say our first step would be to really look at that network. The other area where we invest time building is around accelerators. So we work with some accelerators, incubators, some of the universities. We've worked with a few of the universities to help us also stand up some of the programs. And finally, we also work with nonprofits that are working on the fintech ecosystem that are also helping develop the different careers. So we're very interested on not, of course, we'd love to work with all the fintechs, but what we're looking is for that one idea, and a little bit what you were just saying, right? That idea that is different, because of course we can acquire services through different multiple or organizations, larger organizations. You know, we work with all the Googles, the Microsofts, all of them. But why we end up going to the fintech? Because we see that innovation sitting there, right? In terms of the speed at which they're using innovation, new technology to bring new ideas. And of course, we have the power of distribution from our end. So bringing them into our experiences to create a better solution that actually drives a lot of value for, obviously, for our customers and for ourselves. So we really love fintechs. We really like to assess them. We just need to make sure to know how to use them and when.
Wonderful, thank you. Does anybody else want to address this, or do we go back out here? I think going back out here is exciting because that was a very good question. All right, who else has a question? Wonderful. Please, up front here, and then yourself at the back. Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Maybe just a quick question about remittances from immigrants. You know, that's a big issue for Mexico's economy. I think 60 billion last year. I'm assuming there is a lot of experience in Canada, given the big diasporas from India, China, etc. And immigrants might not be the traditional bank customers. My experience is that they don't go through the banks to do the remittances, for example, the Mexican immigrants in Mexico. So I'm just asking you if this is a topic, or is there a policy, how this issue fits into what you're trying to develop?
How about we start with Claudia and see if anybody else wants to answer that question as well.
I think so. My focus isn't so much on fintech. So I think,
But inclusion.
Yes.
I think that's why I'm bringing you in here.
right. So that is something that would be promoted. It's not exactly what I work on. I think maybe one of you would have a better answer, but in the sense of inclusion, yes. But in that sense, no. Sorry.
Sorry about that. That's okay. Anybody else? We're going to come back to you, but anybody else before? Yes?
So
Okay,
I have
and I'll come back
experience
to you after.
moving countries
Yeah.
and trying to move bank accounts. It's not pleasant, right, at all. I was shocked at how difficult it was, and how do I say this, untrusted I was, right, having no history in the country, despite having 10 years of history somewhere else, right? And I think there's this element of a need for that to be disrupted by somebody for whatever reason. I think of, I was thinking what's behind your question, right? What I really like about open banking is it has the ability to disrupt, which creates opportunity. And the opportunity is often to create better service for people who they can control their data. One, that's a small element of it. But imagine if the history of my creditworthiness is visible across international boundaries, and therefore migration is easier. I couldn't get a credit card in Canada when I arrived, and I had a wallet full of credit cards. I just had to go through a UK, I mean, it's crazy. Anyway, it's that type of thing which I think is important. That's why I'm a big believer in open banking. I think it is disruptive, but we have to let it be disruptive, right? We have to let those innovations, and it's to improve things like exactly this. The banking for migrants is, I will say that it wasn't a fun experience for me, right? And I can only imagine what it's like across the world doing this type of thing.
So,
Sorry, I guess I've said something very unpopular.
that's a good one.
No, and actually,
Excellent.
amazing. Thank you, because we recently announced our team is really focused on the newcomers experience. We recently announced a pilot a program that we're doing with a fintech called Nova Credit, in which we are bringing the credit history from abroad to Canada. And then now we can offer better products. So you come to our branches today, you will be offered your credit products based on your credit history from your country of origin. So we're just piloting that, and we're hoping to continue to expand it. That was announced a little bit towards the end of last year, so we're really excited with that fintech, and we're continuing to look at different things. How can we create, you know, the I don't know how you call it in Mexico, but the roscas, community savings. So community savings, saving together. We're exploring those, especially. We see, for example, some communities they can't, like the Muslim community, will not be able to pay interest, right? So we're looking at those as different methods of really helping that. We're also exploring things like advice. So people don't like getting advice from their banks; they actually like advice from the communities. So how can we bring those things? And again, going back to that innovation, we're seeing these things coming from the fintech community. So we're exploring those type of partnerships to see if we can create better solutions, better products, and we're ready that journey.
Thank you. How exciting is that, right? Suddenly we have this fabulous question. We get culturally contingent and specific banking that's changing the game and engaging community in the process. So interesting. How about yourself?
So I have a different view here.
The voice of reason also from the Bank of Canada. Yes.
Which just, I guess, tempers, again, the hype that technology would revolutionize remittances and cross-border. So actually the G20 identify remittances and cross-border as a large global problem, right? So the World Bank has estimated that the average cost of a remittance is 6.5% of the value of the remittance, right? So that's very large, mostly for lower income remittances, right? So there's an agenda, 2 years ongoing, in which the Financial Stability Board and the Committee on Payments Market Infrastructure are putting forward proposals to advance the agenda of improving cross-border payments, right? So we put together a list of 19 building blocks, meaning what are the different pieces in the payment chain of a cross-border transaction that could help improve the efficiency of those payments. And only a small part of those are actually technology. Most of those are regulatory. For example, opening hours of different systems in 2 different countries. Mm-hmm. Well, that has just to do with each country's particularities or different time zones. AML and KYC, those are not necessarily technology, but there's an overlap with technology, right? The point here is that this global problem is confronting right now a global response, thanks to the G20 and the different bodies. Are we going to make leaps and bounds thanks to technology? Well, if it's paired with those regulatory changes, maybe, and I think change is coming.
All right, thank you. We have a question from the gentleman at the back. Somebody warm up a question for me, just in case we have a bit more time afterwards to sneak one in. Please.
Dan Willis from Scotiabank. So one of the things in a separate forum
Can you speak a little bit louder,
one of the
please?
things in a separate forum that became very apparent is there's a bit of a tension between very large companies that are offering processing power and AI models and smaller companies that have to access that processing power and then use those models to then innovate on top of that. And so then banks are obviously partnering with both sides of that, the larger companies to access cloud and AI models, and then integrating fintechs in who can do specific niche jobs within the bank better and provide enhanced services. How do we see that relationship playing out in banking? Do you see, or especially in countries like Canada, Mexico, where a lot of that very large computing power isn't located? And I know that's a broad, tough question, so take that wherever you like.
Can I start with you, Francisco, on that one?
Oh, I hope someone else would answer so I could think of my answer.
So you can bounce off them. Okay, we'll pause for a second. Anybody else want to jump in right away? Yes, go for it.
I think there's this interesting disparity between the capability of a large organization, their ability to build AI systems, and the capability of a startup or a small company to do it. And I think there's this element of, again, if you look at the charter for OpenAI when they started, right, was all about sharing innovation for the good of everybody, right? And I think there's elements of altruistic AI that happen, but I think more and more we're approaching scenarios where it's the big companies who are trying to drive the innovation agenda. And I think you see with OpenAI's partnership with Microsoft and Azure being a platform. I love Microsoft. I use ChatGPT, OpenAI. I think there's fantastic tools, but I think there is a definite challenge for small innovators to have access to the same capability. And I think it will drive some degree of innovation there as well. And I think we have to ensure that we're not ceding too much power to too few people. In that, I can talk about this topic all day, but I've probably given you enough time to.
But it ties in nicely with what you're saying about the ecosystem, right? So nurturing big players, small players, and medium players in the ecosystem. Forgive my.
So I'll speculate here. I have, I guess, not a particular insight here, and I'll answer with a question: is do we think that LLMs will be commoditized or not? And I think we don't know yet if that's the case. If the answer is yes, I think this distinction might be blurred. A large or a small company will not matter as a partner. It'll be like the cloud, right? And you'll go with whomever gives you the best service. But it's a commodity nowadays, right? Maybe added with some security features or whatever you might want to put on your cloud. But I guess that's my question. And some people might say, well, no, you cannot commoditize LLMs. They cost hundreds of millions to train. But I think there's a case to be made that they can be commoditized insofar we understand how they're done. You can distribute the computing power over millions of people in an open platform for training. So I don't see any friction that necessarily keeps those most effective LLMs closed.
Provocative. Ideas?
I think that there is an element to GPT-2 was the last GPT model that was publicly, you could figure out how it was built, right? GPT-3 and 4 are you can't do that. They're keeping that closed. And I think everybody knows how it's made, right? Kind of. It's the gray areas, the technology behind LLMs has been around for 5 years, roughly, right? And I remember everyone getting excited about the latest LLM craze, and I was rolling my eyes. Like, you could see it coming. It's another AI kind of fad is happening. I think the issue is, right, the innovation that led to these LLMs existing today. Clearly, there's innovation that was shared publicly, right? Mm-hmm. And then there was a closure point. And the closure point was all about money, right? And it was about who has the money to build an LLM, right? Because most startups, as an example, will not. They'll be able to leverage someone else's work, but they won't be able to start from the ground, right? And I think I'm not sure that that's good, right? I think there's an element of encouraging innovation and transparency in innovation, and allowing academia, allowing startups to be able to play with the necessary tooling and infrastructure at scale to be able to build competing technologies, right? I think that's important. It feels important to me. And by the way, I wasn't always, I spent 10 years in IBM, right? So I've worked with large resource, part of the Watson group. I've used a quantum computer, right? I think it's really important that we think about the innovators at the bottom of the pile, because that's where I think the investment needs to go, right?
So really, we're just getting warmed up, but you know what? It's done, unfortunately. So what I'd like to do to close, because this was a very interesting, I didn't think we would get to the point where we would say, We need access to large infrastructure to enable small companies to grow in this very complex ecosystem. So on that last note, some final parting words from each and one of you, and then we'll have some time to chat during the break. Who wants to start us off? All right, you get to go.
Okay. So I think a parting thought for me is just going to be a clarification that I've been thinking I should make. Mexico does not have a full open banking standard. I love how I've hijacked this into being all about my favorite topic, which is open banking. So that's amazing. So Mexico actually included open banking in the FinTech law that was published a few years ago. But it wasn't implemented as fast as we'd like. Let's put it that way. So right now, what open banking looks like in Mexico is that banks have had to make the location of their ATMs available through a standardized API. And if you're thinking, well, wait, I can see that on Google Maps, you'd be entirely right. So that's my clarification. And we hope that that priority is picked up again. And we can continue working on open banking in Mexico. And I might also just leave you with my favorite open banking use case from the UK. And yeah, it's short.
Oh.
So it's this charity company that helps people manage their finances, and their end objective is suicide prevention. And with open banking, what it allows, as I said, is to help people be in control of their data. So I can say, I have an account with you. Yes, please share my account information with this charity / now FinTech, so they can help me manage my money. And so if they see that I started gambling again, or suddenly I've come into a lot of debt, they can call me and help take care of me and make sure that I don't make any drastic decisions. So that's we were talking about innovation. That's my favorite use case so far in the UK.
Thank you. So standards and inclusion and community support in a new financial space. Final great last words, please.
So as at Scotiabank, I know we were talking about the size of the companies. We do, of course, tend to work more with fintechs that are what we call tier one bank ready, which obviously have had a lot of traction because of again, going back to the issue of trust. You have to make sure that what we're putting in front of our customers is something, technology that's solid. Having said that, we do monitor companies. Sometimes we're actually meeting and spending time meeting the companies that have a great idea. We're actually watching them grow. And the company has 2 people in this company, and they have a model in which they have outsourced a lot of their computing powers, and it's outsourced. And we are fascinated by the company, and we're constantly watching them grow and seeing how. So maybe some of these companies would actually eventually we would want either to partner with them or work in a more collaborative way with them. So I would say you have really a very creative idea. It's more about the idea. As we were hearing one VC say the other day, was like, it's not anymore about you came first. Coming first is not a moat. It doesn't protect your business. So you need to make sure that you have something that really is creative, innovative. And if that's the case, then we definitely are interested.
Nice. So you don't have to be big to be great. Fabulous. Robin?
Last thoughts. I don't have any last thoughts, actually. I'm very excited to be here, and I think these events are very important for building understanding, right? And showing opportunities, what's the potential that we have. I love coming to these events and talking to people, particularly if I disagree with someone. I love it, right? So I'm very pleased to be here, and I think, I guess I think economies are driven by a lot of innovators, driving new business, creating new opportunity, and I'm very passionate about that. I'm very passionate about this space and Invest Ottawa as well for exactly the same reason, and I think we need to think about how we enable that. I'm not averse to regulating it either. I think regulation creates innovation, right? So I think it's all about thinking about how we enable that, how we remove barriers that will help people build great companies.
Okay, so enabling removal of barriers to grow companies. Those are good final words. And you're going to close us off.
Yes,
Francisco.
well, just to probably advertise the Retail Payments Activity Act is coming into force this year. If there's any paytech entrepreneur here that might fall into that regime, please take a look at that regulatory regime and register. It's an important step in Canada's progress towards a more open payments ecosystem, hopefully also with the expansion of access to Payments Canada infrastructure that will allow you connectivity to the backbone of payment systems in Canada.
So we end with legislation, but a good one that's going to open the space up. So thank you very much to our great panelists, Claudia, Francisco, Robin, and Fabiana. And thank you for your great questions.